We call it cutting. It isn't exactly that. To me, it goes much deeper. Cutting implies severing something. It really should be called assembly. Mosaic is assembling something to create a whole, create an idea.
That's the time. Feel like making dreams come true. Oh, babe.
All right, here we go. Episode 15 of The Drop in the house. Coming in hot as usual today, July 31st. Last day of July. MK, we are officially halfway through summer break.
It's true.
How are we feeling, my friend?
Well, my back went out this past weekend, so
Was that, can I ask, was it because of softball on Sunday?
Well, no, it was not because, well, I guess it was a little bit because of softball. Went out Saturday. I was just getting up out of a chair, and it just,
Of course.
it tightened up, it cramped up on me, and I was like, oh, that's not good. And we were shorthanded for softball this weekend.
Of course, you were short-handed. Let's give a little quick backstory. MK and I used to play on the same team, Sunday morning softball. How many years now? It's got to be.
It's got to be over 10, I think.
Yeah, over 10 years. My back kicked out way before MK's, and I've been retired for about 5 seasons. But MK stuck with it, and he's been with the guys ever since they play. And I was excited to learn that they picked up the season again a couple of weeks ago, right?
Shortened 7-week season. And then this past Sunday, it didn't help playing. We were shorthanded. I was going to take a week off, and then since we were shorthanded, I'm like, oh, I'll play. And that didn't help. So Monday, Tuesday, I was pretty much out of commission. Wednesday, I was upright again. So I'm feeling much better, though. That's why I upgraded my chair. I now have a chair with a back.
Good.
No more little stool anymore.
No more stool.
A little bit more support. And then hopefully at the end of this, I'll be able to stand up.
Excellent. Good. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
You can join the list of my appliances in my house because apparently they have, without my knowledge, signed on to a mass suicide pact. All of the appliances in my house. It
happens that way.
Since it's been incredible. Since the start of our quarantine here in New York, which started end of March, I have had to purchase a pair of washer and dryer. And then a few weeks after that, our oven went simultaneously with the air conditioning in my 2 youngest girls' bedroom upstairs. So we had to purchase a oven and an air conditioning unit. And then just this past, I'd say 2 weeks ago, our hot water heater crapped out. So we've been out without hot water for the past almost week and a half. Finally got a company to put in a temporary one until we get a whole new system put in at the end of August. MK, you would be impressed with my MacGyver-esque ingenuities. I was at one point last week in the heat wave that we've had in New York. I laid out the hose all day on the deck, let it get nice and hot, put the spray head on it, jerry-rigged it to the top of my ladder, and then stood under it and got about a 3-minute hot shower on the deck.
The water gets very hot when you leave out the hose.
It does. It does. I was the only one willing to do that, though, on the outside.
So you're basically like camping at home, basically.
Pretty much. I'm the only one, though. All the females in the house have been going to my mother-in-law's to shower. So I was trying to go a little rugged there for a while. So, so we'll see. Hopefully the temporary hot water heater will
and at least you got basically a brand new house now.
It's the worst timing ever in the middle. And for so long, we couldn't get anybody to come and service anything because nobody was sending people to the house. Yep. So it was a rough go. Yeah. But we'll see. We have a big announcement coming up next week here in New York about school coming up in September.
Yeah, keeping our fingers crossed.
Keeping our fingers crossed. We'll see what our Governor Cuomo, has in store for us. I'm under the impression that no matter what he says, we're going to change it within 2 weeks again anyway. But we never know. We're hoping for at least some personal in-person interaction.
I have a feeling it's going to be now. I have a feeling what I'm hearing from most schools is that they're proposing, either in class or at home, almost giving most people options. But,
right.
Whether or not you want to send your kids, but we'll see what happens. I mean, I hope we're back in the class. I have a feeling we're due for some big changes, though.
I think so. I think so, especially for the arts. And the guest that we have coming on is no stranger to education. He's been a teacher also at the college level. So we'll get to him and some of his opinions on those things in a few minutes. But yeah, it's going to be interesting for the art and all the hands-on classes like the cooking class and technology and all those kinds of things. The lab, quote unquote lab classes. We'll have to see how that goes. That's going to be it's going to be a challenge. And then tricky. Like we've said, MK, like our classrooms also are a haven for so many kids. They come in and hang out and have lunch and find those places to kind of hide during the day. I'm wondering how that's going to be affected too if we have caps on how many kids are allowed in a room at once, and turning those kids away is going to be heartbreaking for me particularly.
Yeah,
I love having them.
We'll find out soon, though. I mean,
we'll see.
Either way, though, I just want to be back. I want to almost feel important. I haven't really worked since March. I feel like I'm not really adding anything to society. So I just want to be back and have some type of importance and relevance again, so that's what I miss the most. I want to get back to work.
Yeah. Well, I think, when you have a career that is a calling, I think it's a much different feeling than just a job. We don't have jobs, we have careers. That's how I feel. And it's, between the two of us, we have over 35 years of teaching experience. So it's, it's something that's in our core. It's something that we identify with. And when you have that taken away from you so abruptly and without any warning, it kind of hits you a lot. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. But MK, our guest today, I'm telling you, bro, it's like we have to rename the show Area 51 for the arts, because it's like alien or not.
Yeah,
the otherworldly talent.
They're not human. They're
not. They can't.
Supernatural.
Yeah. Absolutely supernatural. Our guest today, all the way from LA, California, is Jeff Nishinaka. If you're not familiar with what Jeff does, this is just incredible stuff. I personally have been following Jeff for at least over 10 years, like just knowing his work, maybe not on social media, but knowing of him, whether it's through magazines or art publications and seeing his work. I know for a fact that I have added him to one of my PowerPoints in school. We've taught sculpture before, and I've done a paper sculpture unit, certainly not to the Jeff Nishinaka level by any means. But
hopefully, maybe in the future we'll get to that level with them.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, now we have another tool to teach them with. So,
Jeff, welcome to the program, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff,
for having me. No, it's an honor.
Jeff, if you could just give us a little bit here in the beginning of your background. We know you're in California. Are you a born and bred Californian?
Born and bred from Los Angeles. I live about 5.5 miles away from where I basically grew up. I was born in South LA, which I call hood adjacent because right next to South Central.
Wow. Was it a tough growing up, tough lifestyle for you?
It was starting to get tough towards the end of high school, and then it got really bad from the mid 70s on through the 80s. And basically, I think the real turning point as far as the hood kind of like settling down and not being quite as violent was after the Rodney King riots. That's when everything just kind of like, that was like the what would you call it? The
turning point.
Turning point, yeah. The zenith of it, and then things kind of seemed to chill a little bit. It wasn't quite as bad, and now it's, believe it or not, it's completely gentrified or soon to be gentrified.
Right.
Yeah, definitely on its way to it. So kind of weird, but good as change is always good. So I can't.
Right.
My mom's still there, actually. So.
Wow. Okay. Great. Now, so my next question to you is: at what point growing up coming up through the LA school system. When does art kind of click for you? Like, how do you discover it? Is there an aha moment? Does the light bulb go off? What happens?
Well, I've always loved working with my hands. My dad had a garage full of tools, power tools like drill presses, sanders, buffing wheels, metal engraving machines. So I was always working on stuff, even since like junior high school. But I think the real aha moment was actually, believe it or not, in the second grade.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I was elected the mural monitor. We were doing a mural of LA desert. Basically, LA is a desert. And so we did a mural of like a desert scene with cactus and turtles and things like that, and lizards. I did a turtle, and the class liked it so much I was elected the mural monitor.
Nice.
One of the other students, Lisa, said, "Wow, Jeff, you're good. You should become an artist when you grow up." And that's probably when I first thought, hey, maybe not. Is that a job?
That's awesome, though.
Like going back that far, you remember that, huh? Like you remember that girl saying it to you and it clicking at that moment.
Like it was yesterday, yeah, because
Wow.
it made that much of an impact on my life. And of course, I veered away from that. I was told by, of all people, my ceramics teacher in high school that, basically, yeah, don't be an artist, be a doctor, be a dentist. And I failed miserably at that in college. I just
Is that what you started to go to school for?
I thought, well, for UCLA, when I started, graduated from high school and started UCLA, I thought, yeah, okay, I'll be a pre-dental major. The first day of chemistry, they gave us a pop quiz. I could not answer one single question. From there, I went straight to what they called the computer room. This is like in '76.
Yeah.
And dropped out of that class and said, forget it. So I switched my major to painting, sculpture, and graphic arts. I stopped fighting it. I kind of went with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it didn't take you long. Maybe one day in college, you're like, nah, that's it. It's not happening.
Basically, one day, not even one day, half a day.
That's so funny. Did you ever reach out to that girl from second grade that told you that you should be an artist? Have you ever reached back out to her?
After grade school, then junior high school, I think she went to a different junior high school or different high. Anyway, so I saw her around in high school, but you know how, when you're kind of like a goofy high school student, you see someone you used to know like 10 years ago.
Right.
You're too nervous to say hi or, hey, what's up? Trying to be cool. And, I wish I had said hi to her, but I know she's still around. I see her on Facebook, so.
That's
funny.
very cool. That's very cool. So you're in college. So now at UCLA, what is that program like? Are you really exploring a lot of different materials? How do you come upon sculpture in particular, and then specifically paper sculpture? How does that come about?
Well, paper sculpture didn't happen until maybe a few years after that. The art program at UCLA wasn't what I was hoping for. It was basically they were basically taught by the teacher assistants, the TAs. So that the professor wasn't really there until like the last day of class to critique your work. And I just felt that it was a little too loose, wasn't not enough basics, not enough foundation, courses, classes were taught. It was a little bit too free. And I needed, at that point in my life, I needed a bit more structure instead of here's some wood, here's some nails, go make something. I needed a little bit more structure. So I quit UCLA. In fact, it was more like it's either quit or eventually get kicked out because I was subject to dismissal twice.
Oh, boy.
A little rebellious there, Mr. Nishinaka. A little rebellious.
Yeah, a little bit. I would show for the midterms and the final test exams and skip the whole rest and just buy the Cliff Notes.
Oh, boy.
But that was from art classes. It's more for the academic classes.
Right. But in the art classes, it's interesting to hear you say that you crave that structure. In high school prior to that, were you taking classes in high school too? How were the classes for the arts in your high school?
Yeah, I took a drawing class or a painting class, I think. But I think the one that did have the most impact was my ceramics class. And of course, the teacher in that class told me to not be an artist. So
Right.
I think he knew that it was a rough road ahead. So it definitely has been a roller coaster ride for me.
Yeah. So now after UCLA, you drop out of UCLA. What's your path after that?
Okay. Yeah. I went to UCLA for 2 years and 2 quarters and quit because this just wasn't working for me. And then I'd heard about the art center through a friend of mine, and we went to go. We took a tour of the campus, and I was just completely blown away. I mean, to me, it was like Mecca. It was like, you know, this is the place that I need to be here. So I quit UCLA, spent about a year working on a portfolio because you had to submit a portfolio in order to be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
And I submitted it, and I didn't hear from them for months. So finally I called, and basically I fell through the cracks. So it's a good thing I called.
Wow.
And the whatever you call it, the counselor said, was looking through her paperwork and says, "Oh no, hey, yeah, I see your name here. Oh yeah, you were accepted." I was like, surprise. Guess I better start getting my art supplies together.
Yeah.
And, so then I started the art center February of 1979.
Wow. And that's in Pasadena, right?
In Pasadena, yeah, the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena.
Okay.
And it was pretty intense school. There was a rumor going around the campus that the Wall Street Journal did a article about the top most stressful schools in America, and Art Center came in second to Harvard.
Oh, wow.
Really?
It was intense, yeah. It was a marriage buster. No one slept.
Wow.
No one exercised. We didn't eat good, and but it was like going through boot camp, and that was what I needed a kick in the butt. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why do you think it was like that, though? I mean, it's just the structure, the rigidity of the program. What was it about it that made it so stressful?
Honestly, it wasn't so much the instructors, even though we basically had finished art due almost every week for 15 weeks straight. So it was constantly cranking away on stuff. It was more the student peer pressure.
Really?
Because I realized early on that, you know, when I graduate, these are the guys I'm going to compete against.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, in a nice way, in a good way, but realistically speaking, you know, this was my competition. And, you know, I better keep up with the pack. And everybody was driven, you know, because, tuition wasn't cheap. By standards back then, it wasn't cheap. It was, you know, it's like nothing now. Right. You can go to City College City College costs more now than Art Center cost back then, but still, it was a lot of money back in 79, 1980, you know, things like that. So that, and just the fact that this is reality, you know, this is what it's going to be like. If you want to be, you know, somewhat competitive, you really need to buckle down. And I wasn't the best at that, but
but you learned. You obviously learned from it, though.
Yeah, I did. You know, one of my instructors said, you know, 15, 20 years from now, you're going to look back on this class or any of these other classes and think, you know, gee, you know, the classes, the lessons that they taught us really do not, you know, now start to make sense. You know, at the time, it's like, oh, why are we learning this? And what's this all about? And I don't need to know this. And so what about perspective? And who cares about geometry? It's just like learning algebra in high school. It's like, what am I going to use this for? Right. But believe it or not, color, perspective, all those things, composition, it clicked. It took a while, but it finally clicked, and he was right on. So it's very important. Foundation is everything. I
think that's a great message, MK, about foundation. You know, we teach, you know, at the high school level, so many kids think they already know it, and they can just kind of blow past it and do what they want to do. And, you know, trying to re-emphasize, well, let's take it a step back and, you know, go back to ABC before you get to XYZ. And sometimes there's a lot of resistance with that because they feel like you said, well, it's a waste of time, or I don't need this, or I don't understand why I'm learning it. But then, you know, suddenly it clicks and it, you know, light bulb goes on and it all makes sense. Yeah. So now you have a BFA in illustration.
Yes.
Okay. So as you're working towards the illustration degree, is sculpture anywhere near your radar at that point? Or are you just buckling down on what you have to do for illustration?
Yeah, I was buckling down on what I had to do for illustration. I wanted to be an oil painter or acrylics painter. Those were my mediums of choice. I really loved oil painting. Of course, watercolor, pen and ink, charcoal, you name it. It was thrown at us. And that was the great thing about it, was that we were exposed to a lot of different mediums, pretty much every medium that was out there, except for paper sculpture. It was not taught anywhere as far as I know in the world. It's something that I had to pick up on my own, and it was just by chance that halfway through Art Center, I was halfway through the program, and I had a couple of classes during the same semester, fashion drawing class, drawing from a model, and a graphics packaging design class. And they both threw these assignments at us and said, work in something, work something else, work with paper or nails or matchsticks or cardboard or something, but just do something that isn't so flat and two-dimensional. Kind of work on something that is more in relief or three-dimensional. And I discovered paper then. It was merely just a fluke. It kind of fell on my lap. So
It
it
was
was nowhere on the radar. Pardon me?
It was meant to be.
I guess so. Yeah.
Did
really,
did you have any exposure to sculpture of any type while you were at the Art Center? Were there any sculptural classes that you took?
I didn't take any sculpture classes. No, everything was 2D. The mediums that I mentioned, it was pretty much all on that, because it was more geared towards illustration.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it had to be flat 2D art, nothing sculptural. So it was really by accident.
Yeah. I mean, we extensively went over your bio and your website and got to read a little bit of background. And I highlighted that you had such an influence from comic books, and particularly the Marvel comic series and Astro Boy, which is a Japanese comic. Was that kind of like what your focus was in the illustration program? Did you have your sight set on like a comic book or something like that?
No, I mean, in my dreams, but I wish I were Marvel right now, But I know I didn't. I lacked that talent. I mean, like Clint Eastwood said, every man should know his limitations, and I definitely knew my limitations. So I had to work more on my strengths, and that was not one of them. But as far as how I see composition and posing, characters and things like that, or even just models, it had a huge impact on me.
Wow.
And drawing style, everything.
Right. I think, MK, looking at Jeff's work, I think you and I can see that influence, that comic book, that comic illustrative kind of influence on there, because Jeff's work is so vibrant and alive and narrative. It really is. Like,
it is. It's vibrant and alive, and it's monochromatic. It's basically white on white, most of the pieces, and you would still describe it as vibrant, which is kind of in a way odd,
right.
Oh wow.
But
it's absolutely true. I mean, it's the pieces that Jeff makes are absolutely beautiful pieces. I mean, they're fine art pieces. They really exude this craftsmanship and this level of technical skill that is unsurpassed in so many other materials. Like, we look at them, and at first glance, like if you don't realize what it is, MK, we could assume it's digital at first glance.
Yeah, you could say digital. Yeah, definitely. They're
right. I mean,
they're
even
just so clean, so polished. I mean, like I can imagine myself doing this, and to be like fingerprints. It would be like, I don't know how you keep them so clean and fresh.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and we're going to get to process, because we love talking process, and Jeff loves talking about process too. But Jeff, is there a specific? Let's get to you take this class, and this assignment comes your way to use something other than the traditional two-dimensional material. You decide on paper. What's the kind of paper that you start using, and then how does it evolve into what you use now?
Well, the paper I started using was recommended to me by a fellow student. When I decided to do that I wanted to make a paper sculpture for one of the projects, I immediately went to H.G. Daniels. H.G. Daniels was the art supply store at that time. It's in fact, I don't think there are any art stores that compare to H.G. Daniels anymore. They had everything. It was pure Candyland. It was like being in a toy store. Everything from compressors to chairs, furniture, tools, mediums, equipment. So anyway, it turned out that one of my fellow Art Center students worked there. She worked there, on the floor, selling art supplies to help get her through Art Center. And so I saw her. Crystal was her name. And said, "Hey, Krista, how you doing?" And she said, "Yeah, great, cool, whatever." And I said, "Hey, I want to do this paper sculpture for an assignment at the art center, and I have no idea what paper to use, what kind of glue to use, yada yada." I was completely clueless. And she said, "Well, I think you might want to try Strathmore 2-ply or 3-ply. Well, try the Strathmore paper." I said, "Well, what's that?" Well, actually, I heard of the brand, but I'm like, "What kind of Strathmore?" Because they make tons of different types of papers, mediums, and things like that. So she recommended a paper to me, and she said, she might have said, use Elmer's glue. And then she said, "Hey, you might want to check out this guy named Leo Monahan's work. Leo Monahan has been doing it for years now. He started actually in early to mid 60s. And so I checked out his work, and I started collecting it. The only way you could find it are if you look through magazines and print ads, because obviously then the internet did not exist. So I just went through every magazine, and believe it or not, his work was pretty much in a lot of places. Quite a few works here in print, and so I just kind of went from there. Believe it or not, and I still use Strathmore 2-ply, more 3-ply, and Elmer's glue is my glue of choice. So 40 years later, I'm still using the same stuff.
I would have never, MK, I would have never have guessed that. I would have thought for sure that there would be some kind of like crazy adhesive, or who knows, like from another planet, because obviously Jeff's an alien, so it's like he's got some kind of crazy like format going on, or like it's like kryptonic paper, or who knows where it's from. And
so just Strathmore and Elmer's glue.
Strathmore.
Pretty much. I mean, I've experimented with different papers. I even took a handmade paper class, learning how to make Japanese paper, washi paper in Santa Barbara. I drove up there and spent a weekend learning how to do that. Even used that in a few of my sculptures. Collected papers from a paper source. There was a different paper source back then. It's not the same paper source that exists now. It's not for scrapbooks. It's more like handmade papers and real artisan type of papers. It was a totally different thing back then. So I've experimented with a lot of different papers, glues, adhesives. I used to use double-stick foam tape. I used to do a lot more the hot melt, the glue gun stuff. I always go back to Elmer's because it's archival. It won't yellow the paper, won't burn it.
Which is super important. Yeah.
Pardon me?
It's super important, the archival quality, especially with white work. You don't want it to yellow over time.
Yeah, because if you use the wrong glue, it'll basically kind of leach through the paper. And you see the spot where the glue is, if it's the wrong type of glue. So
And what is it about the paper, Jeff, that you keep gravitating back to? What does it do for you that no other paper can do for what you want?
Well, okay, for the paper my paper of choice is the Strathmore 500 series. So that's my secret, my big secret.
By the way, Strathmore, can we sponsor Jeff perhaps? Is there a way to get this man some free paper so that he can do his thing, or what?
That would be cool. Their stuff is expensive. It's pricey. And, I buy it by the pallet sometimes. For certain projects. So, it's up there in the thousands, a few $1,000s worth of paper.
Wow.
So it is pricey, but the Strathmore 500 series is my paper of choice because it's 100% cotton. And I try to do as little manipulating as possible because I like to let the beauty of the paper kind of just shine through it. And if you do too much to it, like wet it, press it, whatever, it just kind of, to me, takes the beauty out of, working with hand, the hand process. It just kind of, it becomes too cumbersome and too time consuming. They have a 300 and a 400 series, but they're wood pulp. The 500 series is 100% cotton. So it stretches a little bit. So when I curl edges or round edges, it'll hold its shape. And so to a certain extent, that is probably the most I manipulate the paper. Of course, I score and fold on the score and do things like that. But other than that, it's very, very little manipulation of the paper. And the reason why I like the white paper is because then it shows the beauty of light and dark, shadow and highlight.
Yeah.
You can't see that with color pieces.
I was going to ask that about your work. I mean, when you're creating a piece, how much does the way that the piece is going to be lit at the end affect? Do you think about that? Do you think about the way it's going to be lit? Whether like
No, I really don't. People think I work with the light and just the right proper position while I'm
yeah,
gluing this thing together. But no, I can do it outside. I've worked everywhere in hotel rooms. I worked actually on a park bench in front of the Colorado River while we were water skiing. Believe it or not, I mean, I've worked everywhere. I've worked in um, um, down in basements of museums. It's just weird. So I have no control over the lighting.
yeah,
So that comes in later. So I worked with photographers, and actually I worked with lighting designers. Working with them, actually, what it means is I let them do their thing.
yeah,
A little
Right,
bit of
right.
input, but they're the experts. So I do my thing, and I tell them, like, make me look good. Please make me look good. It's up to you guys. So I take it into consideration, but I don't really work that way. Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
Wow. Well, we know Jeff does a lot of corporate work. He works with some big name
Huge
clients.
list. Huge.
His list is just so impressive. So Jeff, let me ask you: when it comes to working on a commission, with MK's comments about the lighting, does a corporation come in with a set idea for what they want from you and they want it lit a certain way, or does that come into play when you start designing things? Take us through that step by step for our students, so that how do you deal with a client, a corporate client? What's the first step?
Well, the first step, it starts out with like a conference call. Myself, my agent, they're creative, they're account executives. So there might be anywhere from 3 to 7 or 8 people on a call, and they kind of go over the brief, what their expectations or hopes are, and but they want me to put myself into it. Otherwise, what's the point of having me do it when they could,
Right.
and basically do something digital?
Yeah.
The
Right.
programs are so powerful now. You can kind of pretty much get the look of paper sculpture, but if you really look at it, actually though at this point now, yeah, I can tell if it's computer generated or the real thing. But then again, there's so much retouching after the fact, with a real paper sculpture, that sometimes it's kind of a mix of the two.
Right.
But there's a point where I have to let it go and just let them do their thing, because it's more for them and not for me, to sell myself. It's for them to sell their product.
MK is pulling up this, the pages within Jeff's website of some of the clients that he's worked with, and this one in particular is Barbie. He's got an extensive, like we said, an extensive clientele. But so Jeff, they give you this idea, they pitch you this idea. Now, do you go now and start with some prep work, some drawings? What goes on after the concept is agreed upon?
Okay, well, just backing up a little bit, the concept can either be something verbal, it could be a written, as I said, a written, I'm losing my train of thought, a written, write-up of what they want, what they're hoping for, and nothing visual. Or it could be a sketch, or even like a full-color rendering of what they want the sculpture to look like. Fortunately, that doesn't happen very often, as far as having something so precise and concise, of what they want. They kind of like give me a written idea, maybe some real rough sketches, literally drawn on a napkin, and say, here, this is what we want. Can you do kind of something like this, but out of paper, and make it look better than our little So then from there, then I go home, or I am home. I go to my studio, which is just in my garage, and I work on sketches, thumbnails, do a bunch of those, and then kind of focus in on like maybe 2, 3 rough, thumbnails, and do rough sketches, and then present that to them. Rough sketches a little bit more refined, but not super refined, because they're still just idea sketches. And then from there, I get feedback and maybe do more rough sketches. And once they've kind of like narrowed in on a particular sketch that they favor the most, then I take that to more of a tighter sketch, a tighter drawing, cleaner drawing. And what I mean by drawing, they're line drawings. So again, they're almost like comic book art, because they're just outlines and of what the sculpture might look like, or hopefully will look like. and then present that to them. And of course, then we go back and forth maybe once or twice. Or if I'm lucky, they'll say, great, this is what we want, go for it. So from there, I just kind of take it on my own. I blow it up to the actual size of the sculpture. If I'm doing 18 by 24 inch paper sculpture, then I blow up the drawing to 18 by 24. My drawings are basically 9 by 12 inches.
Okay.
Because I need to be able to scan them and make a JPEG and send it to them, via email or WeTransfer.com. So from there, I blow up that sketch to whatever size. If I'm doing an 18 by 24 inch paper sculpture, then that's the size. If I'm doing a large sculpture that's really literally 15 feet by 20 feet, I might do a drawing that big.
Wow.
Somehow lay it out in sections. I tile the drawing because I can't print something large. I tile them and I tape it together, and I'll draw sections of it. But that way I know that everything is at the proper scale. The worst thing to do is to show up on site and realize that you made something either too large or too small, because by the time you're there, you have anywhere from 2 to 3 days, maybe 4 days to install it. And if you're not spot on, you're in deep poop. So,
well, I can imagine. Absolutely. You know what? It's got my head spinning now, Jeff, because I'm thinking that all of your work is done small and then scanned and then they use it for print. But you're creating things for live events too?
Oh yeah, I do everything from small print to installations. Normally the installations are temporary. They might be up for like 5 or 6 days, and they're torn down. Well, this one you're showing right now was for a really cool event for the Game of Thrones.
That's MK and I are big fans of Game of Thrones. Let me tell you.
Oh,
wow.
me too.
Look at this.
This is for a press event that they had announcing season 6. So it came up before season 6 started. And it was the coolest event. It was myself and 4 other artists, either single artists that worked alone or a group of artists that worked as a team.
Wow.
And they had the coolest event. This one here with the butterflies and the dragonfly and all the foliage and stuff was for an event for Cartier for one of their stores in Singapore. This one we had to put up in 4 days, and it was basically just over 9 feet tall and about 26 inches wide. And so I had a drawing that was that big. And thank you.
And it's all paper and Elmer's adhesive.
Yeah. Well, there's some hot glue.
Right.
But the pieces themselves are put together like the dragonfly, that version of a hummingbird. It's paper and Elmer's glue, and then to attach it to the wall, I use the hot glue.
Wow.
Yeah, sometimes I use like dry adhesive.
How do you plan out at that scale?
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking in terms of like levels too? Like this, do you have to be like a chess player and think 3 moves ahead with something like that?
Yeah, we need to. I work when something that large. I need an assistant or two. So
right.
And they're fellow artists or creative people. So I like, I always think, the more minds, the better. The more brains, the more people involved, the better. So we kind of hash out the details, like what levels go first, and in what order do we start attaching things, and so that we reach the certain, the proper order in order, to install it. Because you don't want to install something on top of something that's not supposed to be there. So anyway, but that's about, it's nothing very deep. To me, it's more logic, like, the background goes on first, and those are just basically abstract foliage and branches and things like that. So it's pretty much, to me, pretty obvious what goes on first and what goes on last. So is there
any pre-assemblage in, like, let's say like you do like one of the bugs first and then put it on all together, or are you working on the surface as you go?
Oh, no. Yeah, the bugs, the insects, the butterflies all had to be made here first in LA.
Right.
Carefully packed and then shipped to Singapore a week ahead of time to make sure it arrives on time. And then when I get there, because basically I had 4 days to install it, which took up until 4 days. I basically stopped midnight on the 4th day.
Wow.
We are still working on the other aspects of the event. But making all those pieces took it took 3 solid weeks, weekends included. So basically 21 days, 16 to 20 hours a day straight. I was able to pack it just in time to get it to shipping. I think I used Nippon Express to ship it to Singapore and to make sure it got there in time for us. I think it arrived maybe a day or two early. Thank goodness.
That's just it's there's so much that goes into this process that so many people take for granted. Like, you look at the finished piece and like, oh yeah, that's great. Okay, wow, that's really cool. But so few people, if you're not directly involved in it, are aware of so many, and it's going to sound like a pun, but so many moving parts that come with it.
Oh yeah, these large installations, they're the most exciting. You know, I really get energized out of them, but they're the most stressful. I mean, I think this project, I must have lost like 5 or 6 pounds. I always lose weight.
I wish that was my problem. I wish that was my problem.
Well, that's because you're on your feet the whole time. You don't think about eating. I become dehydrated. I get the worst muscle cramps after it's done.
Wow.
I physically am exhausted, mentally more exhausted than that, because they really take a lot out of it, more mentally than physically. Yeah. So that's why if you're going to do this type of work, you need to go to the gym, you need to run, or you need to do something to stay in shape in order to keep doing it.
So you almost have to have like this athlete mentality, Jeff, right? Like you have to almost like train yourself physically.
You do, because I'm up and down on ladders because this thing is 9 feet high. And I've worked on, 15, 20 feet high, and you're up and down ladders for the whole day, for 3, 4, 5, 6 days straight. And so, squats, you got to do squats, you got to do core training, a lot of that, push-ups, everything. So you really physically need to stay in shape. Otherwise, you're just going to crash and burn at the end of the project. I mean,
yeah. Do you find that when you do a large project like that, do you need to take time off a little bit between the next thing you take on, or are you jumping right into the next project?
Oh, no. Yeah, well, there have been times when I would have to jump right into the next project, and that's not the best condition. That's not great.
Yeah.
I'm always thankful for the next project, but I need a couple days just to chill and do nothing.
Right.
And kind of recoup and pig out and eat. And
but it sounds like you might almost need a mental break from it too at times. Like you just have to reset yourself.
Yeah. Well, you do, because there's also jet lag, because, when you fly there's like a 15, 16, 17 hour difference. So when I get back home, I'm on like Singapore time or China time or whatever, or Europe time, London time. And that's really, to come back home and think I can get right back into something else. Your mind is still swimming in the haze.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, how much on the average, how much travel is involved in what you're doing? Do you travel extensively, or is it kind of pick and choose? You get to kind of decide how you want to do it, where you want to go.
No, I wish I had that luxury. No, I take them as they come, and I try and take everything. The only time I'll refuse a job is if the timeline is ridiculous. Like, we need this in 3 days, and I know that it's basically a 2-month project.
Right.
Like for Singapore, we went through the sketch stage. I think that took 3 weeks, and I said, wow, you guys, the deadline is getting closer and closer. And
Right.
it's a drop dead deadline, meaning I have to have it done that date, or that's it.
Right.
How long did that stay up for, that piece?
I think it stayed up for 3 days.
Oh wow.
Maybe 5 days.
And then what happens to it?
Then they tear it down, because
like tear it down or take it down.
Well,
it's theirs, right? They own it after that.
Yeah, from that point, I had to let it go, which is fine. From that point on, I mentally, mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever, I let it go, because if I can't, then it'll eat me up. But I
believe it.
With every piece I do, because then I can't move on to the next.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like having to forget the last play. You have to. It's almost like being a cornerback in the NFL. Okay, it's like if you give up a touchdown, you got to just put it out of your head and refocus on the next play.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's you just have to reset.
I just feel like with all that time that you put into it, that there has to be some type of attachment to see it go up for 3 days and then come down. It's kind of like what we talked to Chris Carlson, Tom, about with the chalk drawings on the.
Yeah, and have it
Really
washed
about
away. I would
it being
yeah.
in that space for that time, and after that,
Right.
it's moved
Right.
on.
Jeff, I would have to imagine that there is a range of emotion that comes with one of these kinds of large projects where the excitement builds and builds and builds and the adrenaline is rushing while you're in it. And then you kind of crash, like you said, you come down from it. And then you have to almost mourn the loss of the piece when it comes down. How do you manage that?
No, I never do. I never mourn. I never get to that stage. I don't know if I'm weird. Well, okay, I'm weird. I'm an alien, but I'm able to that way, mentally move on to the next piece. I never mourn the loss of a piece. There are some pieces that I think that, oh yeah, it would have been kind of cool to keep that because there's a special memory attached to it, not to the piece itself, but it just reminds me of when my dog was at my feet while I'm making this, or friends came over and they have to glue these little pieces to it. There's always the story behind it is more meaningful than the actual piece itself. And so I can almost remember, not always, but a lot of the stories behind the pieces as I'm making them. And, they become somewhat nostalgic. And that's the part I miss, it's the journey, getting there and finishing it is, believe me, the biggest relief. That I can't even tell you how relieved I feel after it's done, because until then it's constant stress. It's like being on stage for 3 months straight and everybody's watching you, and then when it's done you can finally relax and just let things go and be yourself.
I mean, I think that's MK. That's just another great message that you and I, particularly in our classes, like to emphasize how much the journey is more important than the destination. We say that a lot in our classes, and to hear someone as accomplished and talented as Jeff say that, I think that that's such a great thing for our students to hear. Is that it sounds to me, Jeff, like the experience of making the piece is more valuable than the end result for you personally.
Oh yeah, no, because I always think, well, if this piece is gone, I can always make another one. Not that I want to, or whatever have to, but I feel like, okay, it's replaceable, but the experiences behind it are treasured. There are people that I've met that I would not have been able to meet if I weren't a paper sculptor. I could have been a painter or done oil painter or whatever I chosen, but I don't think I would have come across so many different paths, that people, meeting people, had it not been for paper sculpture, only because I was one of the few out there doing it. Not the best, but just one of the few. So there, it's like being the biggest fish in a pond or a puddle. That alone kind of gave me the edge, as far as being able to get out there and meet people.
I would think so. I think it's so rewarding for you, and it's so nice to hear you be so appreciative of the journey that you're still on too. Like you made it clear in the pre-check last week that you're far from finished. Like you just keep learning things each time you do something new every single time, right?
Oh yeah, there's always something new to learn, and once ego comes into play, if it's all about ego and about my art and my work and this is me, I have to do my thing, then you miss the bigger picture. It's the relationships and the experiences of traveling to different countries and different cities and different states and meeting these people that you would have met had you not been able to do this. And that's the part that, it's priceless. You can't buy that type of experience. And that's the part that I will remember long after the last paper sculpture has crumbled and turned to dust. I will have these memories of people that I had met and these experiences and places that I've traveled to that were made possible by being a paper sculptor. Sounds kind of silly, but
not at all. I think it's a very inspiring thing to hear from an artist of your caliber and how acclaimed you are, and how it's just so refreshing to hear the lack of ego that you put into everything, and how centered you seem to be about what you do, and how receptive you are to all of that positivity and that energy from what you do. I think that that's a beautiful thing. Have you always been like that? Is that something that you've acquired as you've continued to work? Where do you get that mindset?
I don't know. Well, I mean, I have friends that are struggling selling their art, and I have one friend in particular, and he was going through his pile of paintings. He had the hugest pile of paintings. I wish I had that many paper sculptures. And I could do a show, but I don't have enough to do a show right now. I have to make new stuff. But he was going through it, and every other piece he showed me, he would say, "Oh, this one I don't want to sell because I became too attached to it." I'm like, well, then what's the point of doing it if you're not going to share it? It's not going to do any good sitting in a pile under your bed or in your flat file or wherever it is you keep it. You need to get your work out there, because not only are you sharing a little bit of yourself, but it gives you access to people that that you would never have been able to meet. And honestly, I have met some of the most remarkable people just because of what I do. It's I can't even begin to start with how amazing it's been. So to me, being an artist is, it's about doing what you do and doing your thing. But the bigger picture, it's about being out there in the world and just having all these wonderful experiences with people and places. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Right.
It reminds me of somebody in the comments section said, one would waste a lot of time if not enjoying the journey. And it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, and you know what, MK, what impresses me so much about Jeff too, is how willing and open he is to just admit all of that. Like, it's a lot of artists that, we have met years and years, ago, and that we've come, not anybody on this program. I mean, everyone on this program has been so open, but we do know personally in our own lives so many artists who are closed off or hold things too close to them because they're afraid to share it, or
and
they're
our teachers,
especially our teachers in other districts who don't believe in sharing their quote unquote secrets or tips because they think it's somehow going to, come back and get stolen from them or anything like that. So I'm going to ask you now, because I know that you also have had experience teaching. How rewarding is it to be able for you to give that knowledge back? And is there the same amount of adrenaline to making a piece to teaching? Is it a different kind of energy for you? Where does that fall in your lifestyle?
It's the same energy, but it's a different kind of energy, because it's more, I think, more here than actually cutting and doing stuff, because they're the ones doing the cutting and the gluing and stuff like that. And I'm just basically guiding them through it. But my big secret is that I learned stuff from them that I didn't even think I can employ, or use in my artwork. I think, oh my God, what's this tape? Blue tape? I never thought of using blue tape. I used that old, whatever, that beige drafting tape. But the blue tape was better.
Yeah, you learn a lot from your students.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from my students.
And you get motivated too, I find too.
Pardon me?
I feel like when I'm teaching too, I get motivated. It's like looking at good art. You want to go home, you want to produce, and same thing with good students like that.
Oh, it's inspiring because I watch how they do things when they do things, and as they're working on stuff, and I can see certain things that when I'm doing it, I'm real tight, and actually I probably get cramps in my neck, and I get just real stiff sometimes because I'm so concerned about. Am I doing this right? And is this a good cut? And am I gluing this clean? But then when I watch them, they're just kind of just doing it and just letting it go, letting themselves go and basically getting over themselves and teaching me that I need to get over myself and just do it. And they're just doing it for the pure joy. And, what I've learned from my students is that they're just doing it because they just love working with their hands. And it kind of takes me back to, to the whole point of why I'm doing this, because I love working with my hands. I like making things, and in that way since grade school.
Right.
So it's
but
very.
There also seems to me to be this rewarding factor for you to be able to share what you know and give back and pay it forward.
Yeah.
It's something about your personality that is very giving and very open and very warm. Right, MK? Like you get
absolutely.
that vibe.
I mean,
like even
on your website, you have it, you show all your work, you have advertising, fashion, fine art, and then at the bottom you give the how-to, which I think is awesome. You give books that you recommend, to learn the craft, and I think that's awesome. That's giving back. That's laying the groundwork.
That's good karma.
Laying the
really
groundwork for future paper artists.
Yeah.
I hope it's good karma. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. I love giving because inevitably I always end up getting back more, and it gives me a reason to keep doing it, and to have a student, the photos you showed of that at the Mark Adams School of Woodwork, that was in Indiana, in the middle of cornfield country. I mean, there's nothing there but this woodworking school. It's the size of a Costco in the middle of nowhere. I mean, literally surrounded by corn cobs, cornfield. And it's like, what the heck is this? But then when you walk in, it's like, whoa. And then they have these students fly in. They drive in, but they also fly in from the East Coast, some from the Midwest, some from the South. And to take my class, just to meet me and take my class, I mean, what a rush. I mean, I'm flattered and humbled at the same time. It's like, wow, they're going to lay out all this money just to come here and make a few paper dolls, cut and paste from me. I need to give back as much as they're giving to me, sacrificing on their side. I need to do an equal amount just to show my appreciation for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a fantastic message too.
Yeah,
that really is. Let me ask you, Jeff, before we have a couple of questions coming into the chat. Before we get to those, if you could, share with us, like, since you give so much of your background and information, who right now is an artist or a couple artists that you're looking to for inspiration, or that you're following on social media, or that you're a big fan of right now? And it doesn't have to be in your medium, but is there anyone in particular right now that you just can't get enough of?
Oh, Tristan Eaton.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I saw he did the HBO thing as well, the Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first time I met him in person. I've always been a fan of his work, and I guess he kind of liked my work too, because we really hit it off. I mean,
that's awesome. And a fellow Los Angeles resident, correct?
Yeah.
Is he from LA?
He's from LA, but he had a studio on the East Coast.
Yeah,
yes, he did. He was in Brooklyn for a while too. Yes.
Yeah, the coolest guy. I want to be him when I grow up. I'm older than him.
That's so funny.
Yuko Shimizu, I mean, her work is so different from mine, but a lot of line work, and almost like in a very nice way, like comic book art. She does a lot of line work and fills it in with color, and amazing drafts person. They're just two amazing talents. I mean, I can go down a list of other artists out there. Leo Monahan is the guy who got me started. He's 86, he'll be 87 soon. He lives in North Carolina, but I met him when he was living here in LA, and I still follow his work. He's a paper sculptor, and he's the one that got me started. So I am still a huge fan of his work. All these 40-something years later. So
MK, we are again the fastest hour on Zoom.
This was a really fast one.
This was a really fast.
Yeah.
We have MK. You want to look at some of the questions in the chat, and we'll read off that.
One of the questions that came up, which is a great question, because Tom and I were talking about it like 15 minutes before we got started, about packing up artwork, is could you tell us, how do you pack up your pieces so they don't get damaged, like when you're shipping them or sending them out?
If I have the time, I try and make like a foam core box for them with sides, so that they sit inside of a box, and then each piece is in a separate box, and then put in then put inside a larger box with a lot of either styrofoam around it or bubble wrap. Sometimes I don't have that luxury. Literally, sometimes I'm packing to the point, I'm packing, and I finish packing the last strip of tape just in time to bring it in the house, to have FedEx come up and come over and pick it up in 30 minutes.
Wow.
And a lot of time it's because I'm just not given enough time. But in a perfect world, I would put everything in their own separate foam core box within a box. So it's a box within a box.
Within a box.
And try and give about minimum 2 inch, if not 3 or 4 inch of breathing space around the sculpture, inside the box, so that if there are any punctures or any banging, it's somewhat insulated from that, because they literally toss these boxes across the room. I've had holes put in boxes that have arrived, at a client's house or on site, on location, with holes in them, and just it's amazing what these things go through. It's like the girl that's stomping on them in those old suitcase commercials.
Yeah. And then we have another.
You got a couple more questions. Yeah.
Yeah. It says, it's how did Jackie Chan come cross paths with your work so long ago? What's the backstory between your friendship with Jackie Chan?
Well, back in 1995, we have a common friend, Curtis Wong. Curtis is, at the age of 22 or 23, started Inside Kung Fu magazine as a kid, literally as a kid, in his garage. It then became one of the biggest selling magazines, martial arts magazine worldwide, second to Black Belt magazine, or might have been first, I don't know. Anyway, so Curtis had a couple of my pieces, sculptures, in his house, and one of them was over the toilet in his guest bathroom. He had a huge house, so he had a powder room, bathroom, whatever.
Right.
Hung one of the pieces there. Of course, and Jackie wanted to go visit, hang out at Curtis's house after receiving, I think it was an MTV Lifetime Achievement Award. He said, "Hey, Curtis, let's go hang out at your house afterwards. I want to relax." So he went there. They hung out. They relaxed. Jackie went to go use the facility. Came out and said, "Hey, what's this in here in your bathroom? I've never seen this before. What is this?" And Curtis said, "Well, it's a paper sculpture." He said, "I've been all over the world. I've seen everything, but I've never seen this before. I want to buy this or buy these." And Curtis said, "Well, I introduce you to the artist. He's a friend of mine." And so he turned out Jackie was in town 3 weeks later for another photo shoot. And Curtis called and said, as his wife called and said, "Jeff, Curtis wants you to be at a photo shoot that Jackie's at. Be there in 15 minutes. I'm like, 15 minutes? Oh my God, it's going to take me that long just to get there by car. And so anyway, I rushed there, got there, maybe in 20 minutes. And I was babysitting my nephew at the time. He was 12 years old. So he joined me. And it's the first time I got to meet Jackie. And Jackie said, "I like your work. I want to collect it. So can you make pieces for me?" Wow. And we've been friends ever since then. I think since then, he's commissioned about 40 pieces.
Oh, wow.
For himself and as gifts, things like that. So, and we've become just really great personal friends.
That's awesome.
I've traveled with him, done a lot of stuff with him. I know maybe a little bit too much personal stuff about him.
You got the goods on him. Yeah. MK, you want to take that last one at the bottom? That'll be our last question. I like that question.
Somebody asked, do you do collaborations with other artists?
Yes. No, well, I've never had the opportunity, but I'm always open to it. I want to do I would like to do a collaboration with a guy who does music. So I'll incorporate his music into my work, whether it becomes, and that would be more an experiential type of event, maybe as part of an installation or whatever. But yeah, I am always open to collaborations. I did a collaboration with the Museum of Modern Art in New York, which was a very cool collaboration. I've done others I can't think of offhand, but they're more the ones who would give input and the vehicle for which I would able to express myself during these collaborations. But it wasn't like their artwork and my artwork kind of like put together to create a final piece, so to speak.
Right.
I did do one big collaboration for Spotify, and it was with a group that did video projections, and it was for a Lauryn Hill celebration of the 20th anniversary of her hit album.
Wow.
A couple of years ago. That was a really cool event. And so yeah, I am always open to collaborations, and they don't necessarily need to be a visual artist. They could be a performing artist or whatever, music, anything like that. Yeah, I am always open, because I'm always trying to find new ways to reinvent my art. I never wanted to become static and, do the same thing I was doing 20, 30 years ago. That's when I think you kind of like die as an artist. It always needs to be new and fresh and open to new ideas. And that's what Picasso did. You know, that's why he was prolific to the very end. You know, he did prints, he did everything, performing. He incorporated with live performances, and that's what I want to do. I would love to be able to do. So yeah, always open to it.
It's been
another
fantastic episode with just such a talented and genuine.
I was just gonna say that genuine.
He's just, you can't find somebody more genuine than Jeff Nishinaka. Let me tell you. I mean, coming into it, and the client list and the acclaim that he's had, it's just so refreshing to see someone so down to earth and so open about what they do and so willing to give back. It's been really, really so fantastic.
Yeah, I feel lucky, and it's like, how did this happen? You know, and once you start taking it for granted, that's when it ends. And I never want to take it for granted. I never want people to think, oh, you know, he's to this or to that to be able to approach. I am probably the most approachable person there ever is, almost to a point where maybe it's a little dangerous in this day and age.
You are. I mean, we spoke that first time last week. I was like, just like an awesome guy. Like,
yeah, and it's like, and the conversation was so open. It was like we've known Jeff for years almost. Like we felt so comfortable talking with him, and I think the feeling was mutual. Like he was very comfortable telling us, you know, all kinds of stuff, and we learned so much from him just in that 40-minute pre-check, which was just so incredible. And I think that's what MK and I enjoy so much about doing this, is what we learn as artists and as art educators from the artists that come on like Jeff, and how we can bring some of that philosophy and some of that thought process back to our classrooms and back to our studio spaces, so that, you know, we can be inspired by that. It's truly been an inspiring journey for us, Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
It goes both ways. It goes both ways.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and for taking time out to be with us. Everybody who's been listening, again, thank you for joining in. And everybody who's going to be listening at home on post-production. MK, we didn't think, you know, we're still talking about quarantine and being locked up.
I know.
I mean, holy cow, it's been how long now, my friend? It's like almost.
I don't even know. Since March, middle of March. Yeah. In my mind, it's like St. Patrick's Day. Cause that was like,
I know. It's just crazy. But, you know, like we say every episode, keep looking out for one another. Keep taking care of one another. Keep loving one another. You know, it's gonna end. We just all gotta get and do what we gotta do to get through it, and think about each other when we're doing it, and hopefully we blink and it's finally over, and we're talking about something on this program about art and art only, and not having to start this program off with whatever other stuff has been going on. You know, so
true.
So to our special guest Jeff Nishinaka, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you
For everything. And everyone else out there, again, thanks for joining in, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. He was awesome.
Dude, he was awesome.
He's so awesome.
What a nice guy, man.
Yeah, so awesome.